I never imagined I would end up screaming another man's name with my wedding ring still on my finger. Worse, he wasn't just any man. He was my neighbor's husband. And it wasn't the first time. The first time, I told myself it was a moment of weakness. A spark I hadn't felt in years. Something forbidden and thrilling that would die just as quickly as it ignited. But the truth is, I wanted it again. I needed it again. And when it happened the second time, when his hands found the places my husband hadn't touched in months, I didn't stop him. I couldn't. I should feel dirty. I should feel broken. Instead, I feel alive, terrified. Yes. Guilty? God. Yes. But for the first time in so long, I feel like a woman again. And it all started with a glance across the backyard fence. I'm 32. Married for 8 years. No kids, though we tried, half-heartedly, a few years back. My husband Daniel is a good man. Steady, reliable, kind. The kind of man you marry when you're tired of heartbreak and want to build a life that looks good on paper. And for a long time, I convinced myself that was enough. We met in our late 20s, both of us eager to check the boxes society kept whispering about. Marriage, mortgage, milestone anniversaries. He made me feel safe. After a string of passionate but toxic relationships, Daniel felt like an anchor. The sex was fine at first, gentle, almost sweet. But even then, something inside me ached for more intensity, more danger, more want. I silenced that voice, the one that asked for too much, and told myself it was better this way. Now, years later, I feel like I'm floating through a life that isn't really mine. Daniel wakes up, kisses my forehead, pours his coffee, and scrolls through the news. We make dinner, ask each other about work, and fall asleep facing opposite walls. He still looks at me like he loves me, but not like he sees me, not like he wants me. I've become a habit, a piece of furniture in our shared domestic scene. It's not his fault. He works hard, pays attention in the ways he knows how, brings me flowers every third Saturday, fills my gas tank when it's low. But emotionally, physically, spiritually, I'm starving. I long for a kind of touch that melts your thoughts, a look that disarms you, words that leave you breathless before skin ever meets skin. And God, I miss being seen, desired. I stopped initiating sex a year ago. He didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he was relieved. We still do it occasionally, dutifully. But it's more like checking a box than making love. He kisses me with closed lips, touches me like I'm breakable, and always asks, "Was that good for you?" After finishing too soon. I lie. Every time. Sometimes I lie awake at night and wonder if this is just what marriage is. A quiet companionship. A muted kind of love. But deep down, there's a storm inside me I've kept buried. I've smiled. Through it. Folded laundry through it. Laughed at dinner parties through it. Until recently. Until he moved in next door. And that storm started to crack open the surface. His name is Mark. The first time I saw him, he was carrying moving boxes from the back of a black pickup truck. Broad shoulders, forearms flexing under the weight of a box labeled fragile, sweat darkening the collar of his gray t-shirt. He moved, with the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. I watched from my kitchen window, half hidden behind the curtain, pretending to be wiping down the counter while something entirely different stirred low in my stomach. My husband waved from the porch, called out, "Need a hand?" And Mark smiled, shook his head and said, "Thanks, man. I've got it." His voice was deep, warm, too casual for the kind of reaction it pulled out of me. It lingered in my mind longer than it should have. Later that evening, we met officially. His wife, Amanda, had invited us over for a welcome to the neighborhood drink. She was bubbly and blonde, always laughing a little too loudly. They seemed like the perfect couple. Young, attractive, magnetic. Like they belonged in a magazine spread about suburban bliss. And yet, when Mark shook my hand, his grip was just firm enough, his eyes lingering just a moment too long on mine, something unsaid passing between us. An acknowledgement. A flicker. I felt it in the way his thumb grazed my knuckles before letting go. My pulse betrayed me. My cheeks warmed. From then on, he was everywhere, mowing his lawn shirtless while I pretended to water already drenched flowers, offering to help carry groceries when Daniel wasn't home, fixing our shared fence with his sleeves rolled up, the curve of his biceps impossible to ignore. It wasn't just how he looked. It was how he watched. Like he noticed things. Like he saw through me. One day we found ourselves alone on my back patio. Amanda had gone to visit her sister, and Daniel was at a work conference. Mark leaned against the railing, sipping a beer, the late afternoon sun painting his skin in gold and shadow. "You always seem distracted," he said suddenly, catching me off guard. I laughed nervously. Probably just tired. He tilted, his head, eyes narrowing slightly. "No, it's something else. You ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" The question hit harder than I expected. I nodded slowly, my throat tightening. More often than I'd like to admit. That was the beginning. After that, our conversations deepened. He asked questions Daniel never did. What I dreamed about. What music I loved. What I was afraid of. He made me feel like I mattered. Like every word I said was something he wanted. To keep. And I listened to him too. He wasn't as perfect as he seemed. Amanda didn't understand him, he said. She wanted surface things. Appearances, status, routine. "We talk," he'd told me one night, "but she doesn't listen." Not really. It was wrong. I knew it was wrong. But it felt so damn good. We never touched. Not at first. Just long, loaded silences. Passing each other too closely in the driveway. Eye contact that lingered too long. I became hypersensitive to his presence. I could feel him watching me hang laundry. My skin prickled whenever he was near. My body began to betray me, throbbing at night with thoughts of his mouth, his hands, his breath against my neck. I started dressing differently, tighter tops, softer lipstick. I told myself it was harmless, that nothing had happened. But everything was happening. One rainy afternoon, I ran into him at the grocery store. I was in yoga pants and a damp hoodie, hair a mess. I apologized for how I looked, and he said, "You always look incredible." Something snapped in me then. My breath caught. I couldn't speak. We stood too close in the coffee aisle. He reached past me for a bag of beans, his arm brushing against my chest, slow and deliberate. I didn't move. Neither did he. Our faces were inches apart. His eyes dropped to my mouth, then back to my eyes. "You smell like vanilla," he murmured. I wanted to kiss him right there, between the decaf and the espresso, under the humming, fluorescence. But I didn't. I walked away, heart hammering, hands shaking, soaking wet despite the rain jacket. That night, I touched myself for the first time in months, and I didn't think of my husband. The next week, Mark stopped by to return a borrowed ladder. We stood in the garage, alone again. The air between us felt electric, heavy with things we weren't saying. His fingers brushed mine as he handed it over, and I swear, I felt it shoot up my spine. "I think about you more than I should," he whispered, not meeting my eyes. I didn't answer. I couldn't. But I didn't walk away either. And that's when I knew. This wasn't going to stay innocent much longer. It happened on a Wednesday. Amanda was out of town again. Some work retreat, I think. Daniel was in the city overnight for a company dinner. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that gets under your skin and makes your thoughts louder. I'd poured a glass of wine, curled up on the couch with a blanket and a movie I wasn't really watching. And then came the knock. Soft, hesitant, familiar. Mark. He stood there in the doorway, wet from the rain, hoodie clinging to his chest, his hair damp and curling at the edges. He gave a crooked, almost sheepish smile. "Power went out at my place," he said. "Thought I'd check on you." I should have said I was fine, that he should go. But instead I stepped aside and let him in. The silence between us was electric. He didn't sit. Neither did I. We just stood there in the living room, eyes locked, the soft hum of the storm outside pressing in around us. "I've been thinking about you," he said finally, voice low and rough. I felt heat rise up my neck, down my spine. "I know," I whispered. My fingers trembled around the wine glass. He stepped closer, slowly, like giving me time to stop him. My heart pounded against my ribs so loud I was sure he could hear it. When he reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, I leaned into the touch before I could stop myself. My breath hitched. "You can tell me to go," he said. "Right now. Say the word and I'll walk out that door." I should have. I wanted to. But I didn't. Instead, I reached for his face, fingertips grazing the stubble along his jaw. He closed his eyes like the touch hurt, or healed, or both. When our lips met, it was soft at first. Testing, trembling, a breath shared. Between two people on the edge of something irreversible. And then, the dam broke. His hands gripped my waist, pulling me against him as our mouths moved together with hungry, aching desperation. I gasped into him, the kiss deepening, tongues colliding, breath mingling. It was fire and fury and relief all at once. He lifted me, just lifted me like I weighed nothing, and set me down gently on the couch. I remember the way he looked at me then, his chest rising and falling fast, his eyes searching mine for hesitation. I gave him none. Clothes came off in pieces, scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. My shirt, his hoodie, my bra, his jeans. The moment my skin touched his, bare and burning, I moaned, loud and involuntary. His hands roamed with reverence and urgency, tracing lines along my ribs, my hips, the inside of my thighs. His mouth followed, slow and deliberate, kissing parts of me that hadn't been worshipped in years. He didn't rush. He listened, to my breath, my sighs, the arch of my back, the way I whispered his name like a confession. He slid his fingers between my legs, and I almost cried out. I was wet. So wet. And the way he touched me was like he'd been memorizing my body in his dreams. When his mouth found me there, I shattered. He licked and kissed with precision, with hunger, like he needed to taste every inch of my ache. My hands tangled in his hair, pulling, begging. I came hard, gasping, shaking, my thighs closing around his head as I bit my own wrist to keep from screaming. When he finally moved up over me, our eyes met again. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice barely more than a breath. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "God, yes." And then he was inside me, slowly, deeply, stretching me, filling me. I cried out at the first thrust, not in pain, but in release. He moved with care, but purpose. His forehead pressed to mine, our breath hot between us. Every push of his hips sent a ripple through my spine. Every moan he grunted into my ear made my body respond like it had been waiting for this moment all its life. It was so different from Daniel. Daniel was gentle, predictable. He never looked me in the eyes while inside me. But Mark watched me. Every flicker of pleasure, every tremble. He kissed me deeply as he thrust harder and harder, his hand on my throat, not squeezing, just holding, like he wanted to claim every part of me. I lost track of time, of reason, of reality. I only knew the smell of rain, the sound of our skin slapping together, the way my name fell from his lips like a prayer. When I came again, I sobbed. I sobbed, because it felt like something had broken loose inside me, something caged and forgotten. He followed moments later, groaning into my neck, his body trembling as he released inside me. We held on to each other like we were drowning. And then silence. The kind that isn't really silence, more like the breath of something ancient and dangerous that had finally been fed. I lay there under him, my chest heaving, tears slipping down the sides of my face. He kissed them without asking. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "So am I," I replied. But neither of us moved. The guilt didn't come right away. At first, all I felt was light, like I'd been carrying around a secret weight for years and someone had finally lifted it. My body felt alive in a way it hadn't in so long, every nerve humming, every muscle weak and warm. It was only when he pulled me close and wrapped a blanket around us that I realized I was still wearing my wedding ring, that tiny golden circle pressed cold against his skin. "I don't know what this means," I said into the hush. "Me either," he murmured, "but I don't regret it." Neither did I. Not in that moment. But I knew the real world would come knocking soon. With consequences, with guilt, with 1,000 decisions I wasn't ready to make. Still, I curled into him, his heartbeat steady, under my cheek and let myself have this, just for the night. Because after years of numbness, I finally felt something. And that something was him. The morning after was too quiet. Mark had left before sunrise, slipping out of my bed and my house with a kiss to my shoulder and a whisper I couldn't hold on to. I watched the door close behind him, then just sat there on the edge of the couch, naked under the blanket, skin still tingling with the echo of his touch. I didn't cry. Not right away. The tears came later, in the shower, where I sat on the floor with the water burning down on me like penance. I scrubbed my skin until it turned pink, but I couldn't wash him off. His scent, his fingerprints, his voice, still raw in my ear. "You feel like you've been asleep for years," he'd said, "and you just woke up." He wasn't wrong, but the weight of what I'd done settled over me like wet cement. I had cheated, not just physically, emotionally, entirely. There was no undoing it, no pretending it hadn't happened. And worse, I hadn't been drunk, or manipulated, or swept away by some irresistible force beyond my control. I chose him. I chose that night. I let it happen. And deep down, the most terrifying part was that I didn't feel shattered by it. I didn't feel destroyed. I felt awake. Daniel came home that afternoon. I was folding laundry, trying to look normal, even though every shirt and sock in my hands felt surreal, like I was performing a role I no longer remembered how to play. He kissed my cheek, asked how my night was. I lied so easily, it scared me. "Quiet," I said. "Watched a movie. Went to bed early." He smiled and nodded and didn't notice anything. Not the way I flinched when he touched my hip. Not the way I kept blinking too hard, like trying to wipe away a dream. He didn't notice that I couldn't meet his eyes when we talked over takeout, or that my smile was too tight, too rehearsed. That night, he initiated sex. It had been weeks, maybe months, and I didn't have a good reason to say no. Saying no would raise questions I wasn't ready to answer. So I let him. He kissed me, soft and sweet, just like always. I closed my eyes and imagined it was Mark. When he entered me, I bit my lip, so hard I tasted blood. It was nothing like the night before. No urgency, no hunger, no raw, messy, maddening desire. Just rhythm, repetition, a gentle, familiar going through the motions. I didn't move. I didn't moan. I counted ceiling tiles and pretended not to notice how numb I felt. When it was over, he kissed my forehead, whispered, "I love you," rolled over, fell asleep, and I lay there in the dark, listening to his breathing, feeling my chest cave in on itself. How do you come back from this? How do you lie next to a man who trusts you, who believes in you, when you've already betrayed him with your whole body? I didn't know. I still don't. I kept looking at my wedding ring, this tiny gold band that used to mean something. A promise. A life. Now it felt like a chain around my finger, mocking me. And yet, when I remembered the way Mark looked at me, really looked at me, I didn't feel regret. Not the way I was supposed to. I felt seen, desired, alive. And that truth, that dangerous, undeniable truth, was the heaviest guilt of all, because it meant something inside me had shifted, something I couldn't put back. I started avoiding. Mark, no more texts, no more casual conversations by the fence. I thought distance might give me clarity, or at least enough numbness to return to the life I'd carefully built. But every time I saw him, walking his dog, fixing his porch light, just existing, I felt that pull, that ache in the pit of my stomach. And he'd look at me with that same quiet longing, like he knew we were both pretending to be okay. Daniel still didn't suspect a thing. He kissed me good morning, brought me coffee, talked about vacation plans for the fall. I nodded, smiled, played the part. But every night when I closed my eyes, I didn't see beaches or city lights or anniversaries. I saw Mark, his mouth, his hands, the way he whispered my name like a secret meant only for him. And I hated myself for missing him. I hated myself even more for wanting it to happen again. It's been 3 weeks since that night. 3 weeks of pretending. Of waking up beside Daniel and swallowing the guilt like it's part of my breakfast. Of smiling at neighbors, folding laundry, making dinner, keeping up the performance like my soul isn't quietly unraveling behind my eyes. I haven't seen Mark since. Not really. Just glimpses. A car door slamming. His silhouette behind a curtain. The sound of his voice once, low and tired, calling for his dog in the early evening. Every time I hear it, I feel something tighten in my chest. A thread pulling, taut. A reminder that what we did wasn't just physical, it meant something, whether I wanted it to or not. I almost knocked on his door yesterday. I stood on my porch with a cup of tea I didn't want, in a sweatshirt I hadn't washed since that night. My feet moved toward the gate. My heart begged me to stop. And then I saw Amanda pulling into their driveway. She smiled at me, waved. That's when I froze, because it hit me. I'm her. I'm the woman I used to pity. The one who smiled too tight at block parties and probably cried in her car at red lights. The woman who lived next door to her own destruction. I went inside and threw the tea down the drain. I didn't go to Mark's door, but I didn't confess to Daniel either. That's the part I can't untangle. The shame and the desire, the betrayal and the awakening. I don't regret the night with Mark. I can't. It peeled something open inside me I didn't even know was locked. It reminded me I'm still a woman, not just a wife. That I still have wants, hungers, parts of myself I had quietly buried beneath years of routine. And yet, I look at Daniel. Kind, stable, safe Daniel. And I can't bring myself to hurt him more than I already have. He doesn't deserve the truth. Or maybe he does, but I don't have the courage yet. So I'm stuck here. Between two lives. One with a man who sees me but can never be mine. And one with a man who loves me but doesn't know me anymore. I haven't made a decision. Maybe I never will. Maybe life isn't about clean breaks or perfect endings. Maybe it's just about surviving the mess we make and learning to live with the ache. But if this is my diary, my confession, I'll say this. I screamed his name once. And a part of me is still screaming, still burning, still alive. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to silence her.